Drink. Might. The power to fight.
For most of my life, I've been a fighting game player, primarily platform fighters, playing mostly Smash Brothers since I was a child. Honestly, with the amount of time that has passed and the older I've gotten more interested in traditional fighters as a whole and the greater FGC. There is a beauty in all of what is fighting games and the FGC and what they encompass. And in today's video, I'd like to really go over the true soul and the intimacy of the FGC as a whole. Playing Smash for many years has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, not only being able to play my favorite franchise, but ultimately being able to go pro in said franchise. I never thought for a second that I would actually be able to accomplish such a feat, but there came a turning point in my life where I realized that it was more possible than not. But most of my life, I went without ever knowing that there were competitive scenes for these games in general at all whatsoever. And so when I learned of that, I had to be a part of it. With Brawl to 4 and now to Ultimate, Smash has given me some of the best years of my life, as well as pretty much kind of developed me as a person overall and just my drive for things naturally. And I think understanding how to go pro at a game is also a very valuable skill that you can apply to other feats in life, even if it doesn't revolve around being a competitor anymore. Work ethic, attitude, and of course execution are things that can be learned through fighting games. And I feel like just in general, if you break down a fighting game to what it naturally is a very competitive environment. 2 people on the screen, sometimes 4 if you count those that have the teams element, but 2 players on the screen, one emerges victorious, right? 2 players, both sharing a common dream, but only one gets to move ahead ultimately to achieve said dream. Sounds pretty dramatic, but at the groundwork and the basis of fighting games, that's generally what they are. 2 people pitting their dreams against each other and one coming up victorious through effort, not luck, don't want to say luck, but effort, and of course the drive to be the best that you possibly can be, and of course putting in the work to achieve said notion. So with all that being said, what also makes fighting games special? Well, they come in all shapes and sizes, of course, and that is the beauty of it. With platform fighters, you pretty much have this open sandbox environment where it's pretty much free form. You can go to pretty much all lengths of the stage, and they have the offstage element where players have to get wrung out. You can look at games like Multiverses and Smash Brothers, for example, which are pretty much, good indicators and components of this. Smash pretty much paving the way for the genre as a whole, and of course, other successful platform fighters came to follow. Then, when you have games like the traditional fighters, where it all started, your Street Fighters, your Mortal Kombats, Guilty Gears, your anime fighters, you basically are restricted to, I want to say, a box, a rectangle almost. And basically you can't get wrung out by being knocked off the stage unless it's Soul Calibur, of course, but ultimately you will find yourself in trouble if you are in that corner due to pressure and of course being able to not necessarily have as much stage control as the other guy. Now the thing is that that's all sweet, right? But fighting games are actually naturally really difficult to play. And they're really difficult because on the surface level, you can just jump into a game and mash. That's what casual players usually do that don't really want to put in the time or necessarily don't really have the goal in mind to try to execute some of these inputs and hard combos. So mashing, is pretty much just slapping the controller and letting anything happen and one player emerges victorious. And who's to say that's not fun, right? If you're not a competitor and that's what you want to do and that's how you play, then you're very much entitled to do so. However, there is a certain reward from actually putting in the time and effort to learn how to play the game properly or as intended with combos. Execution is very important in these games, and that is pretty much where the wall comes in with these games. As beautiful as they are to watch, and of course each player sees that and they're like, damn, I wish I could do that too. Not every player is going to be able to have the ability to execute said combos, and that's where the skill differentials come in. Now, who's to say that you can't do it with hard work, right? But again, if you don't necessarily have the drive to be the best player or be that great player, then again, you're not at fault for that. That's just the way it rolls. This is both what makes fighting games beautiful, but also a detriment to their own selves. Having high skill ceilings, in my opinion, is detrimental in a way, just because the average player isn't going to want to do all that, or they just necessarily don't understand it. But of course, me as a competitor, I value having high skill ceilings because I think skill expression is extremely important. And of course, watching fighting games being played at their highest level is a form of art all in itself that just cannot be replicated. And I think because fighting games, again, as they stand, are naturally super competitive, there's a special feeling of having all of these players in one room over the weekend, or of course at your local event, and everybody getting hyped and reacting in person at the same time. It's a level of familiarity and intimacy that is hard to replicate in even other games such as shooters or of course MOBAs, which in their own right have their own hype and their own vibe, so to speak, right? I don't think one is better than the other, but I do think naturally they encompass different things when it comes to the realm of esports. Now, sadly, fighting games do not have the best backing in terms of prize pools and infrastructure in that regard. You're not really going to have those thousands and thousands of dollar tournaments unless you have games that support or developers rather, that support their games with open circuits and of course cash flow. But naturally, when you look at a prize pool for something that Riot puts up versus a prize pool for, you want to say, Smash Brothers, it's almost night and day. You know what I mean? Almost literally night and day. And so hopefully that landscape actually changes with Project L coming into the scene and pretty much changing the landscape on how much is really invested into the fighting game scene. Because even though we don't have the best prize pools, we do have a ton of viewership. Because naturally, even if you can't understand the inputs to a fighting game, or you're not understanding how a player is doing that crazy combo, or how their execution is so tight and well timed, from a viewer's perspective, it all still looks incredible to watch all the same. And the same encompassing thought resonates between both competitor and casual. Damn, that was sick. I wish I could do that. And then of course, that actually helps people get into the game and decide whether or not, damn, I'm gonna actually try to do it, right? And then the cycle continues. And so we've all grown up, you know, going to the laundromat maybe on a Sunday, pissed because we had to wake up early to go with our parents. But of course, they have the Street Fighter machine in the corner. You put in a quarter after begging and begging and begging to get that quarter so you can get your ass whooped by the CPU eventually. But all the same, it is still an enjoyable experience, and it's experience that pretty much has lived on for years to come, even with the fall of arcades, sadly, because arcades are fucking hype. Bring back arcades, please. Even with the fall of arcades, we still now are able to play from the comfort of our homes in pretty much the most important era of fighting games being able to be played at home. Due to the COVID-19 outbreak, people, in my opinion, have just been locked away. And of course, we need to play each other in these games. And so you don't want to fight computers all day, you hop online, and that's where Rollback netcode comes in. With technological advancements, we were able to actually break through and be able to play our games online, which has been pretty natural for years to come, but this was so vital for fighting games because really, you want to play with another person. That's what makes them so special. And so with everyone being safe and of course not wanting to get sick, online was more important than ever. However, it took a while for fighting games to actually get proper online, and that has been a staple problem for fighting games for so long. You would think a genre in which being able to input things precisely and on time being so valuable and important would have the best online infrastructure ever, right? But no, I feel like the FGC is pretty much still in its infancy and trying to get stable online. And with the introduction of Rollback netcode, we're actually making strides in improving the quality of our games. Some games used to just straight up be unplayable online. Games like Smash Brothers to this day still have the worst online functionality of any game ever, and sadly Ultimate Well, actually, not sadly, because it's really cool. Ultimate is the best-selling fighting game of all time to this date, and it has the worst online infrastructure. I don't know how it got shipped out like that, but as a smasher, you could tell we're not enthused. It sucks. It's so bad that even the casual player base complains about it, and other games that don't really main Smash as their primary go-to game of choice also complain about it. But there are strides being taken in other games like Street Fighter, Tekken, of course, Multiverses, and all these other games. Guilty Gear being one of the, I want to say one of the more mainstream games that pretty much brought Rollback netcode into the spotlight, basically trying to fix and rectify this situation as much as possible, because again, online functionality is important, and pretty much being able to practice from the comfort of your home with friends, or of course just casually ranking up against players all over the world, is just something that is often not underutilized anymore, but it is still just as significant as ever, of course, to a player's development. But it's another beautiful thing about fighting games, right? You can practice against computers as much as you want and all you want, but at the end of the day, to unlock the true potential and true beauty of a fighting game, it takes two people interacting with each other. And I think the sociable part of playing fighting games is so important, and honestly, I think is the heart of everything that the FGC encompasses and does. That's why scenes live for so long. That's why people are so dedicated to these games, because they're able to actually interact with each other, learn from each other, and of course have fun playing their fighter of choice, or of course fighters of choice, because you don't necessarily only have to pick one. Just because you excel at platform fighters doesn't mean that you can't play a traditional fighter, or vice versa. In fact, I found that I regret spending most of my life only playing platform fighters, aka Smash. So I branched out to Multiverses and found success in that, and now I'll be branching out to Street Fighter 6 and of course Project L. But even though I came late to the game with Street Fighter 5 and Guilty Gear Strive, I still very much enjoy those games deeply, and honestly, even though I do have regret from not being around early in the traditional fighter scene, I'm still very happy that I have the chance to make a name for myself now, even at this given time. And I think the values and things that I learned from going pro in Smash, I can actually take over and transition into those traditional fighters to pretty much help myself find said success in those games. But of course, with the competitive nature of fighting games, the casual aspect of them is just as important. It's one thing, and I remember back in the day where I was always so focused on Smash being like, you gotta play without items, you gotta play so serious, right? Nowadays, I actually am able to find that I don't always want to try 1000% all the time, right? I don't. Sometimes I actually want to play a stupid ass mode and goof around and have fun. Because again, even though by nature these games are competitive, there is actually a beauty to the casual sense of playing these games as well. I think wacky game modes are great, honestly, and I think that those are big selling points for fighting games that they've lacked for so long, because we've just tunneled in so hard on the competitive aspect of it. Don't get me wrong, as important as it is, and of course is the main component of these games, sometimes you want to just play volleyball if you can, or whatever crazy game mode you can think of with items, or of course power-ups or something like that. And this is what retains the casual player base as well. Not everybody is going to have aspirations to go pro as much as they might like watching it and like being a part of the scene. Some people just want to chill out without having to run into tryhards like me 24/7. And I think with Street Fighter 6 is a great indication of this, and even Multiverse is getting some new game modes that primarily focus on the single player or pretty much PvE experience. I think that we basically have to invest a lot more into this, in fighting games in general. I think we'll start to catch on to this, because you cannot have a competitive scene without casual backing, and you cannot have casual backing without a competitive scene. They go hand in hand pretty much. So I think that the importance of casuals is something that can't go overlooked, because most of the viewership that tournaments get aren't just from the competitive scene. There are just onlookers who might not be a part of the scene, but generally again want to watch a fighting game, and they tune in and they're watching, and that adds to the overall experience as well. But lastly, we got to get into the trash talk, because with competition comes egos, and with egos comes some of the best beef that you could possibly get from any fighting game, period. Trash talking, in my opinion, is important. Whether you look at it one way or not, or you think people should just be nice to each other all the time, in the heat of the moment, people are going to talk shit. It's only natural, it's only fair, and to be honest, it's quite entertaining. Think of a match, or think of a world where people play competitive games and they do not roast each other at all ever. There's no beef, nothing. Storylines would get dry, no tension. There's no reason to really care about a match. The match that you enjoyed watching gets way better when both players are into it with something more to prove than just who's the better player. And I think for storytelling, which is one of the most important parts of the FGC, it is super important to have those beefs. However, they can't be forced. They need to be natural. A forced beef or a fake beef is boring as hell. It's lame, it's dry, unoriginal. It's just played out. You don't want to do that, right? But I think that the beauty of the FGC is that these moments happen so naturally, so often, and pretty much out of nowhere. And it's truly out of genuine love and pride for the competitive nature of fighting games that they bring to the table. And so some of the best moments in fighting game history come exactly from the trash talk, the tension, the beef, the anger, the emotions, the raw emotions that come from being victorious or from defeat are natural in esports in general. But with the FGC, it's raw, in front of your face, and usually very unfiltered. And so I think with that being said, there is a true appreciation for the beauty of fighting games and all of this that makes them super duper important. And so whether you are a platform fighter player or a traditional fighter, whether you're a shooting game pro, whether you come from MOBAs, doesn't matter what genre it is, there will always be a place in the FGC for you. And there will always be a place and a time for you to also test your hand at bringing out the beauty of fighting games. Because truly, you are also what makes fighting games important. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and let me know what you think in the comment section below. Take it easy. Deuces.